Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whenever you are. Hello, thank you for watching my videos. It's Mike. It's Monday, April 20th, 2009. Over in the UK, they're getting ready for the release of the 2009 budget. Now, obviously the UK's printing press has been going completely mental. The Chancellor will reveal the extent of the rise in public borrowing this year. Possibly up to £160 billion. An insane amount of money. However, the headline is Alistair Darling is set to announce a £15 billion spending cut over the next 3 years. So basically what's happening, in case you're wondering, is that tax revenue is anticipated to be much lower than before. And with the rise in public spending and public borrowing, they're going to have to cut bits of the budget somewhere. Now, of course, this is the budget for the entire country. This has nothing to do with any local councils. More than likely, local council revenue will also decline dramatically, particularly as people get into more and more financial difficulties. Now, how is this going to impact people? Okay, now one of the things that the budget may introduce is a new business rate. So this is a new business tax. Originally this was going to be a 5% tax, although it's now predicted that it should be around about 2% tax. However, the Center for Economic Research has released a study basically saying that retailers would be in quite a pickle if this anticipated tax goes through. They are predicting up to 20,000 retail jobs could be lost. And an additional 582 retail businesses could fold, mainly because, you know, adding this extra tax onto businesses that are currently struggling would make it difficult for them to survive. We'll have to see where that goes. Now, of course, the other thing about the budget to confirm housing package. Essentially, the UK government's getting a little freaked out over the fact that more and more people are getting into what's termed negative equity, i.e. their house is worth less than their mortgage. So they're setting up a new deal would allow the Treasury to underwrite £50 billion of new mortgage-backed assets. Now, a renowned economic think tank has come up with a report. This is the Ernst & Young Item Club. They're basically saying that the economy is no longer in free fall. Yay! They are also, however, saying that they expect the economy in the UK to shrink by 3.5%, which is considerably more than the official government anticipated dip. So we shall see what's happening. Now, additionally, CBI has predicted a slow, fragile recovery predicted likely to begin next spring. So basically the Item Club is saying that we are at the bottom, and CBI is saying that things should begin to improve in a year or so. Now, of course, what's going to happen to all the people over the next year with all of this? We don't know yet, so we'll see. But remember, the Item Club came out last year. They were the first ones to announce that the recession was actually here. So it could well be that they are correct. However, their original prediction was that GDP would decline by 1% this year. Now they've changed that prediction to 3.5%. I suspect it will be even lower. The dip will be even more. Now, Ambrose Evans Pritchard over the last few days has been putting out some rather startling and stark news reports. You thought I was doom and gloom. I don't know where this guy gets his chirpiness from. IMF warns over parallels to Great Depression. Basically saying that you know, the whole Great Depression thing was it wasn't just one country that was having problem or one region of the world that was having difficulty. It was the entire world that was impacted by changes in the financial system, which is something similar to what we are seeing today. I expect that this is also correct, and the knock-on effects will continue for quite some time. Now, over here in Canada, a major paper manufacturer, paper milling company, Abitibi Water, has basically gone into receivership filed for bankruptcy protection in the United States on Thursday last week. Now, how does this actually impact people? Now, there's a story here from the Financial Post talking about the town of Mackenzie, BC. For a year, the town's 2 saw and paper mills owned by Abitibi Bowater have been near empty. Basically, Abitibi Bowater is going to be laying off something in the order of 11,000 jobs should they not be able to restructure. Now, of course, a thought that I had over the weekend was, well, they must have seen this coming, but apparently not. People have been blinded by the optimism of continual growth and perpetual improvement in lifestyle, which of course is totally unrealistic. So, now, one of the things, another story that caught my eye here, civil servants gave confidential police documents to Eon security guards before climate protest. Now, you may remember I reported last week that the police had arrested 114 people who were going to be doing some bad things at a particular power plant. Now, one of the things that's interesting is that the police had given confidential information about the protests, police reports, to the Eon power generation company. Now, of course, one thing you should think of, I mean, somewhere in here, basically, you know, in the middle of this, it's saying, you know, it is as though the BERR was treating the police as an extension of Eon's private security operation. Okay, now, in case you weren't aware, Eon, of course, is a corporation. Its entire purpose in life is to make a profit. Most other organizations within the United Kingdom and also across the world are also corporations. Metropolitan Police is a corporation. The City of London is a corporation. In fact, indeed, the City of Kitchener-Waterloo, Waterloo, where I'm currently residing, is also a corporation. And the police work for this corporation, these corporations. So is it any surprise that one corporation would share information with another corporation? Of course, there are supposed to be laws in place to prevent this from happening. Yeah. FT in the Financial Times over the weekend. Japan plans emergency share purchases. Okay, now, Japan's ruling Liberal Democratic Party on Friday unveiled details of a proposed 50 trillion yen scheme to allow the government to buy shares from the market if share prices fall to an extent that is seen as an economic emergency. So, of course, you have the plunge protection team in the American markets. Japan wants to set up something similar. Now, there's a entirely different reason why Japan is doing it, and the article goes into some great detail explaining that. But essentially, the government would be part nationalizing a lot of the Japanese economy. Now, where else are we seeing this? In the New York Times. U.S. may convert banks' bailouts to equity share. So effectively, in the United States Treasury would be buying shares or converting the money they have given to these various banks into shares in the banks, effectively nationalizing them, depending on how much ownership they get from the number of shares. This should prove very interesting over the next few weeks. You didn't know you were living in a socialist country, did you? Now, last week, in the National Post, Canada's financial newspaper, one of the newspapers, Chapter 11 protection for GM, quote, highly likely. Now, of course, basically this article is saying, you know, it would be good if this restructuring took place and that, you know, GM would come out of it much better, etc., etc. Now, one thing that a lot of people aren't really taking into account are these credit default swaps. Now, a lot of credit default swaps are built around General Motors. So linked here from the Financial Times, investors see bigger losses on defaults. Now, effectively, what's happening is investors are seeing when companies going default, rather than getting, you know, the usual 40-50% return on things like credit default swaps and bonds, and 70 to 100% on other investment vehicles. They're now getting somewhere in the order of 2 to 3% on these credit default swaps. This is going to have a really interesting effect if General Motors does indeed go bankrupt, because that's going to trigger all kinds of credit default swaps. Wait for it, folks. It's coming. What does this mean? Financial Times today. Inflation is looming on America's horizon. Of course, they're banging on about this concept of America is in a deflationary cycle, which is a load of... But anyway, playing along with that, they're also saying that moving forward, more than likely inflation will be required to reinflate the economy. So prepare for that. Now, they're seeing it somewhere beginning next year, although I think it's going to be much sooner than that myself. Ambrose Evans Pritchard, of course, basically saying this is a total mess. Today's article, gold price could hit $1,500. His subheadline, the aggressive monetary policy of central banks around the world is playing havoc with the structure of the bullion market. Is it any surprise? Now, Ambrose has been trying to tell people, this is not good. This is not good. And no one's listening. However, perhaps someone will. Now, over the weekend, we had the 5th Summit of the Americas, in Trinidad and Tobago. Many pictures were taken of Obama with many other people, and a lot of the headline stories don't really cover much of this. Now, the one thing I'm going to mention is just that this meeting took place. I'm going to do a more in-depth report later on today about the Summit of the Americas meeting and the eventual results that came out of this. Now, one thing you should note is that basically the stated objectives, so 53 heads of state and global economy, blah, 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 blah. Obama and Chavez shaking hands, yep, U.S. and Venezuela, very nice. U.S. and China, Cuba, very, very nice. Everything was positive. And so a lot of things have been, covered over with these headlines of the U.S., Venezuela, U.S., Cuba. If you actually look at what's in the agreements they've signed up to, there's some very interesting things, and I'm going to cover that in a later report. Finally, a couple of funny stories. A beer goggles idea is a myth, claim scientists. This is more along the lines of someone actually paid for this research. Anyway, they're basically claiming that as men get drunk and as women get drunk, this whole idea of beer goggles, the beer goggle effect isn't real. I doubt these scientists have been drunk enough to actually experience it, but never mind. And finally, no more noisy sex, as woman is given Asbo. This is effectively an antisocial behavior order that was handed out to Caroline Cartwright. Basically, in her lovemaking sessions with her husband, she apparently is quite boisterous and loud. And they've had a number of complaints. Even had a complaint from one of their partially deaf neighbors that they're a bit too noisy. So rather than dealing with it, amicably neighbor to neighbor, no, the neighbors went to the council and got the council to generate an antisocial behavior order over too much noise. Okay, folks. Peace, love, understanding. I will do a later report today. Thanks.